Hello everyone, welcome to English Tutorials by Poonam Thakur. In this video, I will be explaining the excerpt Poets and Pancakes from Asokamitran's book My Ears with Boss with the help of a mind map. So let's get started. Poets and Pancakes is an account of the events and personalities of Gemini Studios, a film company in the early days of Indian cinema. It deals with human weaknesses and idiocracies. Poets and Pancakes is an amusing title that arouses the reader's curiosity to know the link between the two. When the reader eagerly tries to find out the relationship between the poets and pancakes, he is served with another dose of amusement. Pancake turns out to be a brand name for a makeup material. This offbeat alternative title is suggestive of the humor that is to follow in the chapter. The choice of the title shows Asokamitran's flair for creating spontaneous humor. Poets and Pancakes is written by Asokamitran, a Tamil writer. It is an account of his experiences at Gemini Studios during its early days. Poets and Pancakes is written by Asokamitran, a Tamil writer. It is an account of his experiences at Gemini Studios during its early days. It is an excerpt from his book My Ears with Boss and talks of the influence of movies on every aspect of life in India. Gemini Studio was one of the most influential film producing organizations located in Chennai. In this piece, author Asokamitran describes the environment and people of the Gemini Studios. This piece is an example of a chatty, rambling style. One thought leads to another, which is then dwelt upon at length. Author begins by telling about Pancake, which was the brand name of the makeup material used in Gemini Studios in huge amount. Describing its use in a humorous way, the author clarifies that it was quite an old brand. Taking a dig at Robert Clive, a man of varied activities. Talking about Clive, the author relates a few interesting things about his stay in Madras, the war he fought, and even his marriage. The makeup department of the Gemini Studios was in the upstairs of a building that was believed to have been Robert Clive's stables. The author then goes on to give an elaborate description of the makeup room. A description of the makeup room. The makeup room had a look of a hair-cutting salon with lights at all angles around half a dozen large mirrors. They were all incandescent lights and made the actors uncomfortable. That's why writer says, so you can imagine the fiery misery of those subjected to makeup. The makeup department, led by a diverse team from various Indian regions, exemplified national integration long before it became a public focus. This group, including a Bengali, a Maharashtrian, a Kannadiga, an Andhra, a Madras Indian Christian, and Anglo-Burmese and local Tamils, could transform anyone into a monstrous figure using huge amounts of pancake and homemade concoctions so that they look presentable in the movies. A strict hierarchy was maintained in the makeup department. The chief makeup artist transforming the lead actors, his senior assistant handling the secondary heroes and heroines, the junior assistant working on the main comedians, the players who played the crowd were the responsibility of the office boy. Talking about the office boy, Asokamitran writes that he was a man in his early 40s but was called a boy because many years ago he had joined the studio as a one. On crowd shooting days, the office boy in his early 40s would mix paint in a large vessel and apply it thickly to cover every pore of the crowd players' faces. Once an aspiring actor, director, screenwriter, or lyricist, he had joined the studio years ago, driven by dreams of stardom, but he ended up as a makeup boy. The office boy's frustrated hopes would often bring him to the author's tiny cubicle. The narrator's position in the studio. Explaining his own position in the studio, the writer humbly shares that he remained occupied with the insignificant task of cutting and storing newspaper clippings. The duty of Asokamitran in Gemini Studios was to cut out newspaper clippings on a wide variety of subjects and store them in files. Many of these had to be written out by hand. Everyone, including the office boy, lectured him continuously. His work seemed insignificant. The office boy would usually come into his cubicle to vent his feelings. So the office boy used the writer as his dumping box by giving vent to his frustrations whenever he would find him in his cubicle. The office boy in the makeup department firmly believed that his misfortunes, disgrace, and neglects were caused by Kothamangalam Subbu. The chapter's narrative then moves to Kothamangalam Subbu. He is described as an undeserving man who rose to status merely for the reason that he belonged to the high caste of Brahmins. Opportunities came readily to him. Subbu was the number 2 at Gemini Studios. He was considered the boss's right-hand man. The author clearly disagrees with office boy's perception and gives a brief portrait of the life of Kothamangalam Subbu. Subbu, a man of boundless creativity and loyalty, was the heart of Gemini Studios during its golden years. He could always find solutions to any film challenge and was equally adept as a poet, addressing the masses with folk-inspired verses and a novel that captured the spirit of early 20th century Devdasis. The narrator further writes that Subbu had a separate identity as a poet. Though he was certainly capable of more complex and higher forms, he deliberately chose to address his poetry to the masses. His success in films overshadowed and dwarfed his literary achievements, or so his critics felt. Although he performed minor roles, but his performance was better than the lead actors. Asokamitran talks about Subbu in a tongue-in-cheek manner, describing him as an amazing actor. Despite his humble, selfless nature and love for supporting others, Subbu's close relationship with the boss and his sycophantic demeanor earned him some enemies, overshadowing his artistic and personal accomplishments. The writer next describes the story department of the studio. This department had a lawyer, a group of writers, and also Subbu. The lawyer was also officially known as the legal advisor, but everybody referred to him as the opposite. An extremely talented but temperamental actress once had a violent outburst on set. While everyone stood in shock, the lawyer quietly recorded her tirade. When she paused, the lawyer played it back for her. Hearing her own harsh words, the actress, who had come from a modest background, was deeply shaken. The experience left her emotionally rattled, and she never fully recovered from the fear it instilled in her. The legal advisor, also a member of the story department, unknowingly brought about the sudden and tragic end of the actress's brief but brilliant career. While everyone in the department wore a kind of uniform, khadi dhoti with a slightly oversized, clumsily tailored white khadi shirt, the legal advisor wore pants and a tie and sometimes a coat that looked like a coat of mail that seemed out of place. He often looked alone and helpless, a man of cold logic in a crowd of dreamers, a neutral man in an assembly of Gandhiites and Khadiites. One day, the boss, S.S. Vasan, decided to shut down the story department, making perhaps the only instance in history where a lawyer lost his job because the poets were sent home. Gemini Studios was the favorite haunt of poets like S.T.S. Yogiyar. He was a freedom fighter and a national poet. Sangu Subramanyam, Krishna Shastri, and Hridaynath Chattopadhyay, a poet and playwright. The author then discusses the various groups and people who paid visit to the studio. The first among them was the Moral Rearmament Army of Frank Buckman. They visited Madras in 1952 and presented the plays Jotham Valley and The Forgotten Factor.
The sets and costumes of these plays were so wonderful that all the 600 members of Gemini family saw these plays many times over. Madras and the Tamil drama community were deeply impressed, and for years most Tamil plays featured scenes of sunrise and sunset inspired by Jotham Valley. Years later, author learned that the MRA was a counter-movement to international communism, and figures like Mr. S.S. Vasan unknowingly supported it. Commenting upon the political ideology of the studio, the author points out that most of the writers wore khadi and were admirers of Gandhiji. Beyond that, they had not the faintest appreciation for political thought of any kind. Naturally, they were all averse to term communism and considered communists to be heartless and violent creatures without warmth and love. Another mysterious visitor who came to the studio was rumored to be a poet or an editor. S.S. Vasan welcomed the guest by delivering a long speech. It was followed by the poet's speech. The poet's speech left the audience confused and silent, as his accent made it nearly impossible to understand him. After an hour, he left, and everyone was left wondering what an English poet was doing in a Tamil film studio surrounded by people whose lives had little room for English poetry. And the poet himself seemed equally bewildered by the situation, and his visit remained a mysterious and unexplained event. From a glimpse of a life at Gemini Studios, Asokamitran now provides a brief glimpse into his own life. One day, he came across an announcement about a short story contest in the newspaper The Hindu. The short story contest was organized by a British periodical, The Encounter. On seeking information about the periodical, the author discovers that its editor was Stephen Spender, the same English poet who had once visited the Gemini Studios. God That Failed. In conclusion, author talks about discovering the paperback edition of The God That Failed a few months after his retirement. He bought The God That Failed, a special low-priced edition marking the 50th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. The book featured essays by 6 eminent writers, including André Gide, Richard Wright, Ignatius Silon, Arthur Koestler, Louis Fisher, and Stephen Spender. 6 eminent men of letters in 6 separate essays described their journeys into communism and their disillusioned return. Asokamitran realized right away that his boss was not interested in Stephen's poetry but his views on communism. Overall, Poets and Pancakes is a light-hearted account of life at Gemini Studios. It humorously explores themes of creativity, cultural diversity, and the disconnect between high literature and ordinary people. Asokamitran's narrative style, marked by wit and subtle satire, brings to life the quirks and challenges of working in Indian film industry during its formative years. With this, we come to the end of the video on Poets and Pancakes. I hope your doubts related to Poets and Pancakes is now clear. If you still have any doubt, feel free to drop a line and I will get back to you. Thank you so much for watching right till the end. Like, share and subscribe. English Tutorials by Poonam Thakur. Bye bye.